August 12th, 1940. 8:37 in the evening. The wind rolls across the cliffs near Bawdsey Manor on the coast of Suffolk, England. Steel towers stand like thin giants against a fading sky, long wires humming softly in the damp air. To a stranger, they look unfinished. But to the men and women inside the operations hut, they are the only reason Britain still breathes freely. Inside a low wooden building, a young radar operator named Thomas Evans leans over a glowing screen. The air smells of warm dust and hot valves. His tea has gone cold. Suddenly, a small green echo flickers on the tube. It appears, fades, then returns stronger. Range, 90 miles. He swallows. Plotting contact, he says, his voice level. Outside, the sky is peaceful. Nothing suggests that over 100 German aircraft are rising from airfields in France. You can't see them, you can't hear them. But the radar can. It listens. At 8:41, Thomas confirms the contact. Multiple echoes now, spread across several miles. Altitude estimated at 15,000 feet. Margaret reaches for the telephone line that connects directly to Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory, north of London. The voice on the other end belongs to a controller at Number 11 Group, the sector responsible for defending southeast England. Raid forming, Margaret reports. Large, heading west-northwest. There is no panic in her tone. Panic wastes seconds. Miles away at RAF Biggin Hill, Pilot Officer James Carter is finishing a late meal in the mess hall. He laughs at a joke he barely hears. The windows rattle slightly as a lorry passes outside. A runner bursts through the door. Scramble! All available pilots. Chairs scrape against the floor. The easy laughter vanishes. Carter grabs his helmet and runs toward the dispersal hut. The ground crew already waits beside the Hawker Hurricanes. Engines cough to life. The smell of fuel fills the air. He does not know how the order came so quickly. He does not know that a young man in a wooden hut near the sea has already seen the enemy. Back at Bawdsey, the green echoes thicken. More returns now, some slightly higher, possibly bombers with fighter escort. Thomas feels a strange mix of fear and pride. The machines are working. The invisible waves are reaching across the water, striking metal wings and returning home with a warning. Margaret listens as new reports come in from other chain home stations along the coast. Dover, Pevensey, Ventnor. The echoes align into a single, undeniable pattern. This is not a small raid. At 8:53, the first Hurricanes lift from Biggin Hill. Carter pushes the throttle forward. The aircraft trembles, then surges down the grass strip. The ground falls away. He climbs into a sky that still looks calm and blue. Below him, Britain is already moving with purpose. Observer Corps volunteers scan the horizon with binoculars. Telephone operators connect lines at lightning speed. Sector controllers plot colored markers across large tables that show every friendly and enemy movement, all because of those silent towers. At 9:02, Thomas watches the echoes split. The formation divides, one group turning slightly toward the Thames estuary, another pushing inland toward airfields. He calls it out. Somewhere in northern France, Luftwaffe crews believe they are approaching England unseen. They expect to cross the coast and catch fighter squadrons refueling or resting. Instead, at 9:17 in the evening, Carter sees dark shapes ahead. Bombers. He checks his instruments. The altitude matches the briefing from the controller. The direction matches exactly. He realizes, in that instant, that someone knew they were coming. He pushes forward into the formation, heart pounding, the setting sun glinting off metal wings. And far behind him, in a quiet hut by the sea, the green echoes continue to pulse, steady and unblinking. The sky has spoken. Britain has listened. 9:24 in the evening. Bentley Priory, Stanmore, north of London. The great house sits in darkness, curtains drawn tight against the risk of stray light. Inside, the air feels heavy with cigarette smoke and concentration. Boots move softly across polished floors. No one runs here. Running means confusion. In the operations room, a wide table dominates the center. It is painted with a map of southern England. Small colored blocks slide across its surface. Each block represents a squadron in the air. Thin wooden markers show enemy raids. Above the table, a gallery of women from the Women Auxiliary Air Force lean forward with headsets pressed against their ears. One of them, leading aircraft woman Eleanor Briggs, repeats coordinates with steady clarity. Raid approaching Thames estuary, altitude 15,000, strength estimated 100 plus. Her voice carries upward to a tall figure standing near the wall. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding watches in silence. Dowding does not shout. He does not pound the table. He studies the board as if it were a chess match played at high speed. Each move must count. Britain cannot replace pilots easily. Every decision carries weight. The system he oversees is called the Dowding system by those who understand its genius. Radar stations, observer corps, filter rooms, sector controls, fighter squadrons. Each piece feeds into the next. It is not one invention that protects Britain. It is the way everything connects. On the map, blue markers representing hurricanes from Biggin Hill move toward the incoming red raid markers. Green markers show Spitfires climbing from Hornchurch. Eleanor receives another report. Raid splitting, secondary group heading toward Rochester. A controller below her nods. Vector number 54 squadron to intercept. Orders travel down telephone lines to sector airfields. Engines roar to life again. Outside, the night deepens. Back in the sky over Kent, James Carter spots flashes of light ahead. Anti-aircraft bursts bloom like dark flowers. The bombers are closer now. He can see the black crosses on their wings. His squadron leader signals attack. Carter dives. The sound of machine guns rattles through the cockpit. Tracers arc into the twilight. He sees a German bomber begin to trail smoke. It banks sharply, losing height. There is no cheering, no triumph, only focus. He pulls away and climbs again. Far below, in a small village near the coast, a family hurries into a backyard shelter. The mother grips her young son close. The distant hum grows louder. Searchlights begin to sweep the sky. At 9:38, Eleanor hears confirmation from the observer corps that enemy aircraft have crossed the coastline. She places another red marker on the table. Dowding finally speaks, his voice calm and low. Keep the squadrons rotating. Do not commit reserves yet. He knows this may not be the only raid tonight. The brilliance of Chain Home is not just early warning, it is efficiency. Fighters are sent only where needed. They are not left circling blindly over the channel. Fuel is saved. Pilots are spared unnecessary strain. On another part of the coast, near Dover, radar operators track a smaller formation approaching at lower altitude. Chain Home low stations, designed to detect aircraft flying beneath the main radar beam, confirm the threat. Information flows to Bentley Priory within minutes. A controller turns to Eleanor. Inform Tangmere sector. Low-level approach. Possible fighter sweep. She nods and relays the message. In France, Luftwaffe commanders believe they are launching coordinated blows against airfields and radar sites. They have targeted several Chain Home masts during the day. Some towers have been damaged. Cables cut. Buildings struck. Yet repairs happen quickly. Engineers climb the steel frames within hours. Replacement parts are stored nearby. The system bends, but does not break. At 9:45, Carter feels his aircraft shudder. He glances at the fuel gauge, running lower now. A voice crackles through his radio. Bandits turning southeast, breaking off. The German formation begins to withdraw across the channel. Carter watches them go, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over him. The engagement lasted minutes. It feels like hours. Back at Bentley Priory, the red markers slowly move back toward the coast. Blue and green markers peel away to land and refuel. Eleanor removes her headset for a moment and rubs her temples. The room does not relax yet. Reports still arrive. Smoke rising from parts of East London. Damage to a railway yard. Casualties unknown. Dowding studies the board one last time before stepping away. Tonight, the raids did not achieve surprise. They did not catch fighter command on the ground. The response was timed with precision, because radar saw them when no human eye could. At 10:12 in the evening, Thomas Evans at Bawdsey watches the last echoes fade from his screen. The green line settles back into quiet stillness. He exhales slowly. The threat has passed for now. He knows the night is not over. It never truly is in the summer of 1940. But something has shifted. For the first time in history, a nation has fought a battle guided by invisible waves, and the enemy has begun to realize that the sky above Britain is no longer empty or blind. It is watched. August 15th, 1940. 11 minutes past 11 in the morning, the North Sea glitters under a hard summer sun. At radar station Danby Beacon in Yorkshire, the air feels different from the south, colder, quieter. The cliffs stretch wide and lonely. Few expect major action here today. Aircraftman William Hardy adjusts his headset and stares at the display. The screen shows only faint static. He has grown used to that. Most heavy raids have struck Kent and Sussex. The Luftwaffe believes northern England is thinly defended. At 11:16, a solid return appears. Hardy leans closer. Range, 100 miles. Bearing east-northeast. He blinks, thinking it may be interference. Then the signal strengthens. It spreads. Multiple returns, tightly grouped. He turns to his supervisor. Sir, we have a large formation, heading inland. The supervisor does not hesitate. Report to filter room immediately. Within minutes, the information travels south through telephone lines and into the national network. At Bentley Priory, fresh markers appear on the northern sector map. German planners had believed distance would protect them. They assumed British radar coverage was limited. They believed northern approaches were less monitored. They were wrong. In Denmark and Norway, Luftwaffe crews climb into Heinkel bombers and Messerschmitt fighters with confidence. They expect light resistance. Intelligence reports have suggested that most Royal Air Force squadrons are committed in the south. Over the North Sea, the German formation flies in disciplined lines. Sunlight flashes off wings. Engines drone steadily. They think they are unseen. Hardy watches the echoes grow. He feels a chill despite the warmth in the hut. The scope does not lie. The scale of the raid is significant. Further inland, at RAF Acklington in Northumberland, Flight Lieutenant Robert Shaw walks toward his Hurricane as the scramble bell rings. He had been writing a letter home. It lies unfinished on his bunk. Ground crew pull chocks away. Shaw climbs into the cockpit, straps tight, eyes scanning the sky. He does not know the exact size of the incoming force. He does not need to. He trusts the system. Chain home gives fighter command time, not hours. Sometimes only 20 minutes. But in air combat, 20 minutes is the difference between chaos and order. At 11:34, Shaw and his squadron lift into clear blue sky. The coastline falls behind them. Below, fishing boats continue their routines, unaware of what approaches from the horizon. Back in the radar hut, Hardy tracks the formation crossing the coast near Sunderland. Observer Corps posts confirm visual contact almost simultaneously. Reports converge. The illusion of surprise dissolves. Over the North Sea, German crews begin to notice something troubling. British fighters are already climbing to meet them, not scattered, not caught on the ground, waiting. Shaw spots the bombers first, dark shapes against the sun. He signals his section to spread. The engagement that follows is fierce and confusing. Aircraft twist and dive. Tracers streak across bright sky. One Hurricane spirals downward, trailing smoke. A German bomber breaks formation and turns back toward the sea. Shaw focuses on a single target, closing the distance carefully. He fires a short burst, then another. Panels tear from the enemy aircraft. It loses altitude steadily. There is no time to watch it fall. The air is filled with movement. Meanwhile, at Danby Beacon, Hardy keeps tracking secondary returns. Some enemy aircraft attempt to divert west, others scatter. The radar picture remains clear. Information flows south and west. Additional squadrons are vectored into position. By early afternoon, the Luftwaffe begins to withdraw. Losses have been heavier than expected. British resistance in the north was not weak. It was organized. Later analysis will show that German intelligence underestimated the reach of the radar network. They believed the tall towers were isolated experiments. They did not grasp how deeply integrated they were into command and control. For the pilots who fought that day, the effect is immediate. Shaw lands at Acklington with fuel nearly exhausted. He climbs out slowly, face streaked with sweat and oil. He looks back at the sky. He knows they were ready, not by chance. Hardy removes his headset hours later, ears ringing from constant signals. He steps outside into open air. The sea looks calm again. Gulls circle above the cliffs. He thinks about the invisible waves that crossed that same water earlier. No one in the village nearby will know his name. Few will understand what happened inside that hut. But today, radar erased the enemy advantage of distance. The North was not blind, and the message is beginning to spread through German ranks. Britain can see. August 18th, 1940. 6:45 in the morning. The sky over southern England is a pale gray, the kind that makes distance hard to judge. At radar station Poling in Sussex, Corporal Edith Warren stands outside for a moment before her shift begins. She looks up at the steel towers rising above the fields. They stretch nearly 300 feet into the air, thin and exposed. They cannot hide. Inside the operations room, equipment hums steadily. The previous week has been relentless. Raids have grown larger. Bombs have struck airfields. Pilots are flying multiple sorties a day. The Luftwaffe has studied photographs of these towers. German commanders now understand that the strange masts along the coast are not decoration. They are eyes. And today, those eyes are targets. At 7:12, Poling detects incoming formations from across the channel. The returns are strong and numerous. Edith relays the bearings with practiced calm. Far to the north, at Bentley Priory, the map table begins to fill again. Controllers anticipate heavy strikes against airfields in Kent and Sussex. They also expect attacks on radar stations. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding listens to updates without visible emotion. He has resisted pressure to dismantle the radar masts, despite concerns they are vulnerable. He believes their value outweighs their visibility. He's about to be tested. By 8 o'clock, German bombers approach the Sussex coast. Among their objectives are the radar sites at Poling and Pevensey. At 8:17, Edith hears the distant rumble. It grows quickly. She remains at her position as long as possible. The screen shows the raid nearly overhead. She passes final data to the filter room. Then the first explosions strike nearby fields. The building shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling. Outside, one of the wooden transmitter huts is hit directly. Flames rise. Personnel move fast but without panic. This has been rehearsed. Critical components are protected in reinforced bunkers. Cables are buried underground. Towers, though tall, are difficult to destroy completely. A bomb detonates close enough to rattle the main operations room. Glass cracks. Edith feels the shock in her chest. She does not run until ordered. Above, Hurricanes and Spitfires engage the attacking formations. August 18th will later be called the hardest day of the Battle of Britain. Losses are high on both sides. Pilot Officer James Carter, now exhausted from continuous operations over the past week, lifts off once more from Biggin Hill. Smoke from earlier strikes still drifts across the airfield. He climbs toward a sky filled with contrails and scattered formations. Below, radar sights burn in places. At Poling, temporary loss of transmission occurs after a direct hit damages power lines. For a brief moment, a gap appears in coverage. At Bentley Priory, controllers note the interruption. They adjust using reports from neighboring stations and the observer corps. Engineers at Poling move immediately. Within hours, emergency generators restore partial function. By the next morning, the station is operational again. The Luftwaffe had hoped to blind Fighter Command. They had assumed the tall masts were fragile and central. They did not understand the resilience built into the network. Chain home is not a single eye. It is many. In the sky above Kent, Carter spots a formation of German fighters diving toward British airfields. He banks sharply, pushing his Hurricane to its limits. He feels the strain in his arms and shoulders. He thinks briefly of home, of quiet streets and ordinary mornings. Then he focuses again. The battle is chaotic. Aircraft fall on both sides. Fields burn. Parachutes open against the gray sky. By late afternoon, the intensity begins to fade. German formations turn back across the channel. Damage assessments come in. Several radar sites have been hit, buildings damaged, equipment destroyed. But the towers still stand. And by nightfall, most stations are transmitting again. At Poling, Edith steps outside after her shift. The air smells of smoke and scorched wood. One hut is gone, another is blackened. The steel masts remain upright, silhouetted against the setting sun. She feels a strange sense of defiance. The enemy tried to silence the sky. Instead, the sky continues to speak. In the weeks that follow, German strategy shifts. Radar sites become less frequent targets. Focus turns increasingly toward cities and industrial centers. The opportunity to dismantle the radar network fades. Dowding knows how narrow the margin has been. He understands that if the system had failed for even a few critical days, Fighter Command might have been overwhelmed. Instead, the chain held. And as summer edges toward autumn, Britain still stands. September 15th, 1940, 11:04 in the morning. The channel is calm, almost indifferent. In a concrete bunker at RAF Uxbridge, part of No. 11 Group Headquarters, the operations room vibrates with tension. Colored markers already crowd the map table. Reports have been coming in since early morning. Radar stations along the coast have detected multiple large formations lifting from airfields in northern France. And the echoes are dense, layered, too large to ignore. This is not a probing raid. This feels decisive. At Ventnor on the Isle of Wight, radar operators watch their screens fill with returns stretching across miles of sky. The pulses arrive clean and strong, bearings confirmed. Altitude rising past 20,000 feet. They pass the data forward within seconds. In Uxbridge, Air Vice Marshal Keith Park studies the board. Park commands the fighter defense of southeast England. He has learned to trust the rhythm of radar reports. Today, the rhythm is relentless. He turns to a controller. Commit squadrons in sequence. Keep reserves in hand. He cannot afford to throw everything at once. The size of the incoming formations suggests waves. Over the channel, more than 200 German aircraft advance in tight formations. Bombers in the center, fighters above and around them. Crews believe they are delivering a crushing blow to London. Some German leaders hope this will break British resistance and clear the path for Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion across the channel. They do not know that every mile of their journey is being measured. At 11:18, the first British squadrons are vectored into position. Hurricanes from Northolt, Spitfires from Biggin Hill, others from Kenley and Hornchurch. Pilot Officer James Carter hears the order through static. Vector 150, Angels 20. He pushes the throttle forward. The engine roars. He climbs toward the sun, knowing the sky ahead is crowded. Below, London carries on with uneasy normality. Buses move, shops open, people glance upward at distant engine noise. In Uxbridge, markers shift rapidly across the map. Eleanor Briggs, now seasoned after weeks of strain, repeats coordinates without hesitation. Her pencil traces the arcs of approaching raids. The system is working at full strain. Chain home stations feed constant updates. Filter rooms eliminate duplicate reports. Sector controls direct fighters with precision measured in minutes. At 11:30, Carter sees them, a vast formation, bombers glinting in sunlight, fighters weaving above like protective shadows. He feels a brief surge of disbelief at the scale. Then training takes over. He and his section dive from altitude. Tracers streak upward in response. The sky becomes a maze of crossing paths and sudden turns. Explosions bloom among the bombers. One aircraft breaks formation, trailing smoke. Another banks sharply, losing cohesion. The engagement spreads across miles of sky over Kent and southeast London. On the ground, civilians watch dogfights unfold overhead. White parachutes drift down. Anti-aircraft guns thunder in measured bursts. In Uxbridge, Park receives updated radar plots. A second wave is forming over the channel. He makes a critical decision. Fresh squadrons are held back until the right moment. Then, when the second wave nears the coast, they are launched to meet it. The timing is exact. German crews encounter fighters not only over London, but again as they withdraw. Losses mount. By mid-afternoon, it is clear the day has not gone as planned for the Luftwaffe. British fighters continue to appear in strength. They are not random. They are guided. At 3:15, radar confirms the main formations turning back across the channel. Carter, low on fuel, watches the enemy retreat. He feels exhaustion deeper than anything before. Weeks of combat have worn him thin, yet something in the pattern today feels different. The attacks were met, not blindly, not desperately, but with calculated response. In the days that follow, large daylight raids diminish. Plans for invasion are postponed, then quietly shelved. Operation Sea Lion fades into uncertainty. Historians will debate many factors behind the failure to invade Britain: pilot skill, industrial output, strategic errors. But beneath it all, there is the steady presence of those towers along the coast: steel frames, buried cables, quiet rooms with glowing screens. On nights when the wind moves in from the sea, the wires still hum softly. Thomas Evans continues his shifts. Eleanor Briggs keeps placing markers. Edith Warren repairs damaged equipment. William Hardy scans empty horizons. They do not fire weapons. They do not fly into combat. Yet their work shapes every interception. Radar did not win the war in a single night. But on nights like September 15th, 1940, it changed what was possible. It turned fear into preparation. It turned uncertainty into knowledge. And it ensured that when the enemy crossed the water, Britain was already waiting. The sky had found its voice, and the world would never fight the same way again.